Welcome everyone, and welcome to the Institute of Managers and Leaders live webinar on 5 ways to build your self-awareness. Now, my name is Anna Maria Connolly, and I am a Regional Manager of Queensland South here at the Institute. Now, just a few housekeeping rules before we get into today's session. The webinar will take approximately 45 minutes to 1 hour. So feel free to send through your questions. There will be allocated time for us to go through any questions. And also just bear in mind, if you feel that you have missed a segment of the webinar, we will be sending out personal emails with the recordings to you individually. Okay. So I want to take this opportunity to ask you the question: why is this topic important to all managers and leaders? And most importantly, why is this topic important to you? As managers and leaders, we know that having the ability to understand and manage our emotions, but importantly, being able to understand and manage the emotions of people around us. So that's the key success to becoming a successful leader and manager. At the Institute, we are about developing skills of professional management, and we know that emotional intelligence, while not directly taught in any courses, is a key success to becoming that better manager. So emotional intelligence is a skill set that can be taught and harnessed, and to effectively engage and empower you to become that better manager, better leader, and better team. So this webinar will be really focused on building that self-awareness, a foundational skill to that emotional intelligence. So you will be able to identify not only yourself, but your team's development and becoming that self-awareness, and to be able to engage and really maximize that most out of that workplace relationship. Now, Kerry Ann Cassidy, our wonderful facilitator next to me, will be delving into the topic more deeply and will let you know about what 5 ways of building your self-awareness means and what it entails. So I'm going to introduce you now to Kerry Ann Cassidy.
Hello. Good to be here today, Anna.
Thank you. Wonderful to have you here indeed.
Thank you very much. Okay, so without further ado, I hope you have answered those questions around self-awareness, because I haven't seen any answers coming through the chat. The first question was, so how self-aware are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And the second piece was, what are 2 ways that you use to develop your self-awareness? So just something to get you started with this morning as we get going. As you heard, we're going to be talking today on 5 ways to build your self-awareness and develop your emotional intelligence as a leader. But hey, listen, we're going to throw in some extra tools as well. So listen, I hope you're along for the ride. I hope you have a notepad and pen, because there are some really cool tools that we're going to be having a look at as we go through this morning. I'm just moving this around a little bit just so that I can be looking straight at you as we go through today. So let me just give you a brief overview on what we're going to be learning today. So super quickly, we're going to look first up at discovering self-awareness. So I want to have a deeper dive into what self-awareness is all about. And then from there, I want to have a look at those 5 ways to build your self-awareness using emotional intelligence. And then we'll end off by looking at how to put your self-awareness into action, because all theory and no action is not a good thing. And then from there, I'm going to be offering you some bonus resources, which IML will send to you if you're interested at the end of the webinar. You'll see as we go through, there's some additional questions that we will not have time to go through as we have just the 30 minutes. But the idea is that I've built in some additional reinforcement to go away and think about. So that's just framing things up. So without further ado, let's have a look at the first bit, which is discovering what self-awareness is all about. So first up, we're going to define what self-awareness is. We're going to have a look at triage, and coming off the back of an interesting week, which I'll share with you briefly very shortly. Triage is something that's close to my heart. We'll have a look at self-awareness. It's a continuum that I like to use, and we'll also talk about overcoming VUCA. So VUCA is a term I used in the last webinar that I did with IML. That's the resilience webinar that we did last time round. For those of you that are back on the call with me, woohoo, good to have you with us. Now, I've heard that there are some of you that are sitting in boardrooms in South Australia and around the countryside, so I'm super excited that you've all packed yourselves into those seats. It doesn't matter where you're coming from today, we're just chuffed to have you. But from a logistical perspective, I'm hoping that we're going to be hearing lots from you. So without further ado, I'm going to open the floor to you. I want you to tell us, you'll see that there's a chat function, and we're going to use it right now. I'm going to ask you, what does self-awareness mean to you, number one, and why is it important? So I'm going to have a pregnant pause right now. I'm going to have some water, and you've got to do the work. So I'm watching my screen to see the answers coming through here. So okay. I love it. Lana's already got some questions coming through. Can anyone ever be fully self-aware? How do I figure out what I don't know? That's awesome, Lana. It's exactly what we're going to have a look at. Nicole, love it. Awareness of how you come across to your team, absolutely. Christy, self-awareness is being aware of how you talk to others, how you ask them to do things, and being aware of your behavior. Wow, they're just coming through. Hossein, love it. I'm aware enough that I'm not aware enough. That's beautiful. Heidi, knowing how you come across to others and being able to change this to get the outcome you desire. Rachel, being aware of how I'm feeling and how this is manifesting itself in how I'm coming across. Beautiful. Gee, these are beautiful. And knowing your strengths and weaknesses and triggers. Absolutely. Mark, self-awareness equals EQ and social intelligence combined. Exclamation mark. I love it. Craig, it means that you are mindful of your actions and words and impacts on others. Bridget, to ensure how I think is present is actually how I present. You guys are on the ball here, I have to say. Okay, so I'm loving what's coming through here. So I've already got from you what self-awareness is. So let's ask the second question. Why is it important? So take a moment just to think about that and just to let me know. Awesome. Why is it important? So Nicole, you're back on it. Effective communication, love it. Can shape your interactions with the others. Erin, awesome, for sure. Affects how others will or are responding to you. Wow, you guys are so on the ball, loving it. Craig, to be a better human being. I love it. Sarah, it's essential when establishing and maintaining effective relationships, workplace well-being, from Hossein again. Susie, important to know the impact that you have on others, for sure. Improved interaction, developing validity within your team. Hamish, Rachel, Kalai, you guys are awesome. Thank you very much. That's exactly, we're definitely on the right track. We're definitely singing to the same tune here, as they say. So I'm going to share with you my thoughts around this, and you're going to see how close we really are. There's some beautiful stuff that you've put on here. And I think just going back up to that original question from Lana, where you asked, like, how do you know what you know? Well, I think you've already started to see some of the answers coming through here, and we all pretty much are seeing it's the same thing. So I'm going to take a step back for just a second, and I'm going to just mention that self-awareness is a foundational skill set of emotional intelligence. Actually, quite a few of you, if I look at the chats, mentioned emotional intelligence. So I'm really chuffed to hear that. And so the definition that I like to use is that emotional intelligence involves a set of skills that define how effectively we perceive, understand, reason with, and are able to recognize our own and other people's feelings. So you were absolutely spot on with regard to what we're about to have a look at. Have a look here. Self-awareness is about being aware of the behavior you demonstrate. your strengths, your limitations, and the impact you have on others. Now, you'll notice there that I spoke about strengths and limitations. I did not speak about your weaknesses, your negative points, because I really believe that as leaders, we need to come from a place of positivity and strength. Sure, we've got lots of things that we need to change, but our strengths give us the energy, and that's where we need to come from. So that's really important. To answer the question why self-awareness is important, I firmly believe that you cannot change the world, you can only change yourself, and in so doing, you can influence those around you to behave in more positive ways. And in that way, you can start to influence and create a positive community. And that is what leadership is all about, isn't it? So thank you very much for sharing. I am super excited. We are definitely going to have a very interactive session today, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So off the back of that, I think what's important is that we need to be able to use and develop what we've already got, because if I think about all that I've seen on the chat, we already know a lot about self-awareness, and I think this is what I often find is that we often underestimate the value of what we already know and are doing. So I'm going to speak to you today about triage, because this is how we're going to build our self-awareness today. So triage is a medical term, and I have to tell you, the last few days for me have been all about triage. Our little girl over the weekend started to experience some medical difficulties, which on Monday morning escalated. We went to the doctor, and the doctor said to us, hospital 2. And so that's exactly where we went, and shock of shocks, we were treated in emergency, and overnight she had to stay there overnight, so mom had to stay there overnight. She's only 7, and in the morning we had an operation, and yesterday, you know, we were recovering. So triage is a medical term that is used to assign priorities to people so that we can better manage people that are coming through hospital centers and emergency situations. But in the same way, I would suggest that we can build our own self-awareness by being aware of triage from 3 perspectives. So the most important perspective from a self-awareness perspective is self-evaluation. And when we talk about self-evaluation, this is evaluating how well you do things in comparison to standards or best practice. Please note, I did not say how well you do things in comparison to other people. And we'll talk about that in a little while. So that's self-evaluation. You have your own perspectives, and they are seriously important. They mean something. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we all have blind spots. So we need to be able to recognize that within each of our blind spots that we need others. So we are not little beacons working on our own. We are not lighthouses working alone. No, we're a community, and we need to be working in unity. So therefore, we need to be able to seek feedback from others, and we'll look at very shortly how we can actually do that in a way that will give you positive results. And third up, we go back once again to you. So you are the most important part of the self-development puzzle. And the last piece there you're seeing is the emotional mastery piece. So you being able to identify and become more familiar with the way that you think, you feel, your values, your actions, and how you show up as a result of that. So these are the 3 areas that you can use to develop your self-awareness. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you are already doing this, which is awesome, right? Now, I want to make this comment, and the comment is really important because we live in a nanosecond of everything needs to be done yesterday kind of situation, and our society pushes us in that direction, but we're actually not made that way. We need to take time out to develop our self-awareness. And that's not going to happen if you are too busy thinking about what you're going to wear today, how you're going to get the kids to school, what you're going to say in that meeting, etc., etc. So this is all going to have to take some time. Now, I'm going to show you how simple this is, because often what people say to me when I say to them, listen, leadership is an inside game, and you've got to take the self-discipline and you've got to take a consistent approach in order to get there. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, I'm just too busy. And that's a terrible excuse. I'm sorry. I'm a busy mom too, but I tell you what, I'm here today and I'm sitting and we're doing this thing, even though we got the timing in terms of New South Wales and Brisbane kind of helter-skelter. I'm loving that we've got everyone on board, because this is the VUCA world in which we live, right? So I want you to understand that in the case of these three areas, that we have to make space and we need to make time on a regular basis to look after ourselves. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a warm-up, right? So already I know that you are sort of semi-warmed up, so we're going to do a little bit more of this. So what I'm going to do first up is, because it might be a bit of a foreign concept to focus on you and your inside game, I'm going to help you to do that. So first up, what I want you to do is I want you to think about a number that you would give yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being not so good, 10 being I'm fabulous at this. I want us to look at 4 different areas, okay? These are 4 tools for understanding who you are. So the first question I want you to answer is, I know who I am and what I stand for. So this is your identity piece. So Kerry Ann Cassidy is a leadership development expert, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm someone who is passionate about helping people to make a difference in their leadership lives. Number 2, I show up authentically as me. So this is all about the congruency piece, right? Now, I want you to think about this really carefully, because I don't think this is easy. I don't think it's easy to show up authentically at work, because I would say to you that you have got so many pressures of what other people think of you, the judgments, the expectations, the needs that people have of you. I think it's quite hard to show up congruently. So I want you to give yourself a number from 1 to 10 on how you believe you show up. And I'm loving you guys are coming in there. So Rachel, Hossein, thank you for putting up your numbers and for being authentic this morning. That's really cool. I want you then to talk to me about, I set my intention before I enter into a conversation. So I really believe that if we are going to make any kind of difference in the world in which we live, we need to be constantly intentional before we go into a conversation. So what's your number on a scale of 1 to 10? 1, not so great, 10 being fabulous. Okay, I'm excited. Rachel, you sharing, this is good. I'm not going to share the numbers, right? Because that's your stuff. I'm thinking this is amazing. Sarah, Catalina, Nicole, Wayne, you guys are awesome. I just want to say well done, because I don't think it's easy to show up and be authentic like you're just being right now. So awesome, well done. The last question there is around emotional intelligence. So I can most often identify other people's feelings in conversations and adapt my delivery to suit a positive outcome. Again, I don't think any of these questions are easy, and that's exactly why I'm asking them today, because I want you, number 1, off the cuff to be able to give an answer, and then at the end of this webinar to be able to come back and then to think about this a little bit more, maybe even have a conversation about it, particularly those of you that are in boardrooms around Australia listening in. This will be a really nice follow-up activity. So just having a look here at some of those comments that are coming through. Russell, okay, awesome. There's some good stuff here. So well done. I'm just going to shout out to Catalin, Mark, Karen, Craig, Catriona, Hussein, Rachel, Sarah, Nicole, Wayne, Joanne, Debbie. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for sharing and going through this. So you've given yourself a number, and I would suggest that we always want to follow up any kind of questioning activity with the debrief. So I've got a few questions here. I'm going to suggest that these questions are follow-up questions. Anna will share with you, for those of you that are interested in receiving the extra resources at the end of this handout of the PowerPoint presentation being one of them, come back and have a look at these. But just for the time being, these are good questions. Number 1, where do I show up strongest? Okay, so where do I show up strongest? Number 2, what are my limitations? Now remember, these are not your weaknesses. Your limitations, you can only focus on 1 or 2 limitations at a time. So be gentle on yourself here. I want you to think about, so how do they affect my interactions and relationships with others, and how should I or could I adapt and flex my approach for better outcomes? So these are some really super quick questions that you could be asking yourself once a week, twice a week, I don't know, as often as is needed for you to develop your self-awareness. So I would say that you are already officially warmed up from some of the stuff that is coming through here. Christy, some really awesome stuff coming through. Some of you are saying, yes, please send me the resources. Great, we will do that at the end. Okay, great. Now, off the back of that, I want to introduce you to a tool that I've developed around self-awareness. I call this my self-awareness continuum, and the way that it works is on a scale of 0 to 100. So I like my continuums, as you can see. So on the one side of the continuum, you've got 0. The other side of the continuum, we've got 100. And I want you to understand that this is a simple way to understand quite a complex concept. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off right at the bottom. Okay, so if we have a look at from around about 0 to 20%, we've got what I would call our 4 horsemen showing up. So can I just check, is that showing up on the screen, the 4 horsemen at the moment? Awesome, great. Okay, so I'm just going to talk these through now. I call them the 4 horsemen because they're not pretty. They're not really pleasant. These 4 horsemen you don't really want in your life, but they show up anyway. These are called our low levels of self-awareness. So blame, judgment, criticism, and personalization are the 4 horsemen that tend to show up when we are feeling tired, stressed, when we haven't taken care of ourselves, when we haven't taken that important break that we know we should have, but we went from one meeting to the next meeting, to the next meeting, to the next meeting. This is the space where those would often tend to come up. And the interesting thing is that they come up when we least expect it. So for some of us, you've been suppressing. It's the end of year. I'm hoping some of you are going to take some leave, but it's the end of year. Some of you are starting to feel scratchy. Some of you are starting to feel like your immune system's going down. And it's because those 4 horsemen start to show up. We need to be aware of that, right? Because some people that we work with, some people live here permanently. Most of us, we touch in here every now and again, hopefully, right? But for some of us, we've got people in our teams that show up toxically, and this is why they show up in that way. Next up, I want to have a look at the idea that for a lot of us, we know when we're moving from pain into, I've got to take responsibility. So most of us will understand that there's going to be times in our lives where there's what I would call a crossing the road moment. So those crossing the road moments are usually painful. They usually are painful because we don't tend to, bear out with me here, we don't tend to appreciate and value those things in our lives that come easily. So therefore, we've got to have a bit of pain in our lives for us to truly value stuff. And so typically the crossroads, those moments in time when things are not going well for us, those are our learning moments. And so I often will say that learning equals pain, but pain of a good sort. And so we know that we're starting to become more self-aware when we're starting to take lessons and learn from those difficult times. Now, I am going to say this. We will often, up to 29 times in our lives, forget the lessons we've learned because we are not conscious about what it is that we've gone through, because we just go from one moment to the next, trying to just get through each of our busy days. And that's not good for us because we forget the lessons, we're doomed to repeat them again. Just saying. Next up, what you find is that if you start to take responsibility for your learning and for your life, what you start to notice is that there are fruits of pain. And so the fruits of pain are growth. And you'll see up on the screen that every time you learn something new, you create a new set point. I call it a set point. And that set point allows you to almost grow. And, you know, our experiences and our maturation as human beings mean that by default, we're going to grow and learn anyway. But here's the big question. If you get the idea that for most of us, this is a journey and we're going on a journey and we're learning and we're learning and we're learning, I want you to think about what's going on here, because these arrows represent chaos in terms of what could be happening. Now, I'm just going to ask you, based on what I've just shared with you here, because it's been a bit of a mouthful, what do you think might be going on based on, even though we might have done the hard yards, even though we might have done the hard learning and we've got a new set point, why do you think our self-awareness might continue to go up and down the scale? I'm just going to take a moment and I'm going to let you think about that, and I'm going to ask you just to write down your ideas. Already I'm seeing some ideas come through. Nice one. So Craig saying, I think we're actually not going from one moment to another each day, but from one reaction to another each day. Ouch, that's painful right there, Craig. Christy, forward and back learning, learning things, but we haven't taken it in, and so we have to relearn them, absolutely. Craig again, lack of presence, lack of wisdom. Rachel, lapse due to pressures. Catalin, we fall back into old habits and we get out of it again. Oh, you guys are awesome. Debbie, moving according to our stress, the situations. Regan, we are less emotionally resilient when we're tired or stressed. Exactly, you guys have got it. You're absolutely spot on. I've got another word for it, which will make a lot of sense as I go through it. Thanks, Anne, Sarah, Joanne, Heidi, Chrissy. Very good. It's exactly what you're talking about. We live in a VUCA world. It's exactly what you're saying. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous. We cover that more in the resilience webinar that I shared the last time round. But this is the reality that we live in, right? So unless you're taking care of what I call your inside game as a leader, no one else is going to do it for you. So you have got to take responsibility. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it on the screen. I'm super excited. I'm hoping that I'm validating a lot of what I'm sharing already is stuff that you inherently know. We know this stuff, but because we're not being present and conscious, we lose the lessons. So I just want to have a quick squiz here. So I want to just maybe say this. Thomas Jefferson says that I find that the harder I work, the more luck I seem to have. So if we take everything that I've shared with you today, the simple thing here is that you have to work hard in order to continuously grow in self-awareness. This is not easy. I don't think this is easy. I never said it is easy, but it is simple once you get it. So I wanted to share with you 3 ways to overcome the limitations of VUCA. So these come from my Women's Leadership Program, my Unstoppable Women's Leadership Program, but I'm only going to take you through 3 of them. And as I take you through them, again, I want you to think about, so how good am I showing up with this? And I will have some questions at the end for you. So number 1, first habit for you to overcome the limitations of VUCA is to learn to accept who you are. Like I said in the beginning, your strengths are your superpowers. They are what makes you you. So learning to accept yourself, if you can learn to accept yourself warts and all, then you can learn to accept other people, the people that work for you. None of us is perfect, and we don't need to show up as perfect. You've already seen me today. I'm not perfect, but I am human. And hopefully, therefore, you can relate as a result. Number 2, second habit. The habit of letting go. This is a habit that my mama shared with me. She shared that it is possible to live in harmony with the world if you learn to let stuff go. You know, people are not perfect, therefore you're going to have to learn to forgive them. A lot of times you're going to have to learn to forgive yourself because we're not perfect, right? So learn to let go of your own stuff, and then you can learn to let go of other people's stuff. And I tell you what, that's such a better place to live. Number 3, third habit, is the ability to celebrate and savor. Isn't that beautiful? We have a brain, 90% of our brains, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, because we're set for threat, not reward. I go through this in more detail in our resilience video. But because we're set for threat and not reward, although we're made for reward, we're made for positivity. From Sean Call, The Happiness Advantage, he says that we're 31%, up to 31%, more productive and positive than a neutral, negative, or stressed. We need to understand that our brain is 90% a repository for negative unless we hit the reboot button. So I want you to start to think about and allow yourself to really marinate in those parts of your day where things have gone right, where that person's smile or that little comment that someone made on the way to the lift about how well you presented, you got to savor those. You got to learn to write those down so you can come back to them and savor them. Why? Because we're made for reward, and we work much better when we're in a positive state of mind than when we're in a negative. But this is a habit. So 3 habits, questions to consider. You can read faster than I can speak these out. Number 1, which of these 3 habits resonates as being a strength of yours? Which of these 3 habits is a limitation? And where could you be using these 3 habits when you start to notice VUCA impacting on your everyday? Okay, so we're doing well for timing. Well, we're never ever doing well for timing, are we? We're always kind of 3 steps behind, but we're okay today. Are you enjoying yourselves? That's the main piece. A yes or a no would be good right now. Let's just see it coming through. Yes or no, before I move on to the last 5 pieces. Oh, good. I like that. Cool. Fantastic. Great stuff. I love it. I love it, guys. Thank you so much. You've been so awesome. So this last piece, so let me just point out, we've had a look at 4 tools already. And the reason I like to share with you lots of tools, they're super simple tools, is that not every tool will work for you. Just like in a medical situation, you need to find the right doctor, the right team, you need to find the right tools for your leadership purposes. So I've already given you the 4 questions around identity, congruence, etc. I've also given you now those 3 habits and the questions that go with those. Let's have a look at the 5 ways that you can develop your self-awareness. So off the back of what I've just shared around discovering self-awareness, we'll go back to triage again. Remember, triage was we need to look at yourself first. You're the most important part of any piece of self-awareness. But we've all got blind spots, so we go and have a look at seeking feedback. And the last piece there is that emotional relationship piece. Let's have a look at some tools that we can use that relate to each one of these 3 areas. Okay, so you'll see them because they've all got either a brain or a heart or that seeking feedback icon. So let's have a look first. So your moods and emotions. It's been a pretty intense day. I don't know about you. I don't know where you've come from. I know some of our ladies in the room are like nodding away right now. This is good. I want you to think back over the last 2 hours, just 2 hours, because I would say that your moods and emotions show up. And so I want you to think about potentially, just take an example, right? Just take, was it the example where you kissed Sarah on the way out of the door on the way to work this morning that you're going to go back to? Is it the interaction that you had with your kids on the arguing over the toast this morning? Is it the meeting that you had with your manager or your team, whatever? I want you to just think about your moods and how you have shown up in at least one situation. And I want you to consider your facial expressions, your tone of voice, your body language. And I want you to think about how you would have shown up. And the idea would be that you write this down. So I know we're not going to be able to do this in a lot of detail right now, but if you were just to take some time every day for you to think about what's happening, this will help you to identify where you're at, and then you can have a look at the gap between where you'd like to be, and then you can make some good decisions around what you need to do in order to get there. Okay, great. Awesome, Christy. I'm glad to hear that. I'm happy to realize I check my emotions when entering work. That's very good. Awesome. That's why you know it works. Why this is so important is that research shows that we are unconscious of how we feel around about 85% of the time, which is huge. This will help you to build and hopefully start to change that 90% negative repository in our brain to 90% more positive repository. Wouldn't that be awesome? What a society would look like if we could do that. Okay, number 2, we're moving now on to seeking feedback. So I would love it if you could go and find 3 words that the people that you work with would use to describe you. Now, I know that's a naughty question to ask, and I know when I first started out in life as a facilitator, I asked the question, so how do I show up? And the words that I wanted people to tell me were things like, I wanted people to say to me that I was professional and I was competent and I was knowledgeable. But people didn't want to tell me that. People wanted to tell me, but Kerry, you are energetic and engaging and enthusiastic. And I looked at those and I went, Bleh, I spit on that stuff. I don't like it. But actually, those are my strengths. Those are my superpowers. And yet I underestimated them because they come so easily to me. So here's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be looking at your own 3 words, and then you're going to come up and ask people around you over the next 2, 3, 90 days what words they would use to describe you most often at work. So, be curious, be gentle on yourself, because you're going to go on a journey of self-exploration. You don't know what's going to come out of it. Just saying. Okay, so just want to check in here because I'm just seeing some more ideas come through. I'm going to keep this moving. Okay, so number 3 is tied to the last 2 pieces, because asking for feedback is a crucial skill when it comes to self-awareness. Asking for feedback is a real art. And over the last probably 2 or 3 years, I've started to notice that us as leaders, we want feedback. In fact, a lot of us are feedback starved for the right kind of feedback. And so what we've got to learn to do is to ask for our feedback in an appropriate way. So I'm going to give you 2 steps on how to do that. So 2 different steps. There's quite a few different sub pieces to this, and we're going to have a look through those. So thank you very much. So first of all, we're going to look at positioning and preparation. So when it comes to positioning and preparation, what you want to do is you want to be able to invite objective input from those you know, like, and trust. This is not going to be any good coming from someone who doesn't know, like, or trust you, because the perception's not going to be great. We're looking to build you, not break you. Number 2, you need to be able to explain to them clearly what it is that you're looking for. Number 3, you want to give them space to prepare. So time is essential. A lot of us, when we're asking for feedback, will ask in the moment and expect people to just come up with ideas. Now remember, other people's self-awareness might not be that high, or there might be some danger in them sharing with you at that time. So giving them space will allow them to go away and prepare, and that's critical. And then number 4 is to ask for examples of when you say that I come across as loud, could you give me a few examples of where I've done that? Because often we need to really understand where the other person's coming from. Because if I'm an extrovert, which I clearly am, and you're an introvert, the reason that I'm loud, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, because an extrovert tends to be loud and outspoken in comparison to our more quiet and thoughtful folk out there. Okay, so that's positioning and preparation, crucial. The next piece is then when you get to receive your feedback. So when receiving feedback, you always want to thank them. They've taken the time to answer your questions and to think about what you've asked them for. Then, very important, you've got to learn to take some time yourself. So you want to be able to say, hey, listen, thank you so much, Anna, for sharing your feedback with me. I've got a few questions, if you don't mind me asking. Now, very important, you've got to learn to listen when they're sharing with you. Don't try to justify, defend, or explain, because I know it can feel quite intimidating hearing feedback, and you don't mean it to come across as justifying, defending, or explaining, but it gets in the way of them coming back the next time around when you ask for more feedback. Then, once you've listened, you want to be able to ask for actions, you want to be able to ask them for their support, you want to be authentic in what you will and won't do. One of the probably the most hurtful piece of feedback that I ever got was where someone said to me, or they didn't even say it to me, they said it to someone else. They said, Kerry asked for feedback and she never does anything with it. And the reason that hurt so much was because I had been implementing what they'd shared with me. But the problem is I hadn't gone back and done 6 and 7. I hadn't said to them, I'm going to do this, and I hadn't followed up so that they knew where I was tracking with the process. So that number 7 is very important. Follow up for review so that they know where you're at and they know that you're serious about the information that you have said you're going to be working on. And that being authentic piece is really important too, because you're not always necessarily going to use everything that they've given you. So for example, I've just been working on a whole bunch of material on a website that I'm working to, and I asked for some feedback, and a lady came back, she gave me awesome feedback, and there was so much of it. She didn't understand the big picture of what I was doing, and so some of the feedback that she gave me was not necessarily appropriate for right then. And that's what I have to share back with that person, and that's okay. And the last piece there, it's like a sandwich. You got to thank them in the beginning and you got to thank them in the end, because this is a process and we want to build relationship. Self-awareness, the more you do it, is about building those relationships. So hopefully that's of some use. Some ideas on feedback topics would include things around potentially your leadership style. So you could ask for feedback around, how do I show up at work? What are my strengths? What are my limitations? Your consistency in what you say and do. Your consistency in behaving in the way that you expect others to behave, your strengths, your limitations, your behavior and impact on others. So just a few examples of ideas that you could use. Please don't feel boxed in for those. All right, number 4, the ability to assess your own personality, values, and beliefs is absolutely crucial. So here, what you want to be able to do is understand your personality, your values, and your beliefs shape your perspectives on situations. It's neither wrong nor right, it just is. And that's very important that you recognize, because some people will hear from others that the way that you view things is wrong. And that's not true. It's not true. So your personality, your values, and beliefs uniquely influence your thoughts, feelings, motivations, and behaviors in all situations. And we need to understand that. So these are our filters, and they've helped you to be successful. And I am going to say successful, because you wouldn't be here today if you weren't successful. The next piece there is they can help or hinder your interpretation of events. So yes, they do help us, but sure, they can hinder us. And so we need to understand what these different areas are. So included in the bonus section of these resources, I've given you a link to the Myers-Briggs personality piece, because it'll help you just to break down on their website. They've broken it down. It's quite a nice series of questions that'll help you to explore. Again, this is not a in the moment activity. This is something that you want to savor and go through and spend some time, valuable time, making sure to do. And number 5, for me, probably my most important out of all of these is you want to be able to compare yourself against benchmarks and goals. Please note, you're not comparing yourself against other people. Because you see, when you compare yourself against other people, I know if you're anything like me, I look at myself and I compare myself to others, and I never, ever, ever get to that place where I'm where I want to be. I never, ever look at myself and think, gee, I'm great, I'm awesome. So comparison, very important that you understand this. Comparison kills community, and it most assuredly kills self-esteem. So really make sure that if you're comparing yourself against benchmarks and goals, and I would be setting those benchmarks and goals, and I'd be asking my people to set their benchmarks and goals, then you've got a case for helping your people to step up and start to take responsibility for their words, their actions, their beliefs, all the stuff that we've been talking about today. So I'm going to take a quick breath right now, and possibly even a sip of water. And I'm just going to ask for your comments. Which of these 5 tools that I've just shared with you now has resonated the most? I'm going to give you some space just to share with me. Which of these have resonated the most? Okay, great. So Rachel, comparison, hey, it's that comparison killer. All right, for quite a few of you, actually, the comparison has come up. Yes. Okay, thanks, Michael. Yeah, comparison. You see, we've been on the same page the whole day, you guys. All of us have just agreed every step of the way. It's awesome. Okay, good. So Sarah, you've liked all of this stuff. Bridget, Hossein, Debbie, it's the comparison piece. Wow, that's really huge. I'm so excited, Christy. You've got a way to give and get feedback. That's great. I'm really chuffed about that. Awesome, Craig. I love the space that you're going to take. Great. Thank you, Susie. Awesome. All right. Good. All right, so what are we going to do next? Well, we know that self-awareness is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence, and without it, the other skill sets of emotional intelligence are not quite as effective. So your job is now to take what we've learned, and a lot of you, as you're saying to me, you're really validated today by a lot of the stuff that you're doing is right. So you want to be able to take time to review and ask those great questions. So Craig, you're really on the right track there. That's awesome. So I want you to consider these 9 tools that we've taken you through today, and I want you to consider what your strengths are. I want you to consider how they help you. I want you to consider how they hinder you. I want you to think about potentially how you could adapt or flex to increase your effectiveness. Which of the 9 tools shared do you think could be most useful to apply? And the idea would be to work on these for the next 21 days. Why? 21 days it takes to create an unformed neural pathway, which is the beginning of a habit. It takes another 2 lots of 21 days to create 63 days of a created, formed, solid neural pathway that will hopefully override some of the bad habits that we've got in our lives. So hard work never killed anyone. It just makes us a bit tired, okay? And that's why we've got to get 7.5 hours of sleep. That's another webinar we'll talk about another day, but that's okay, right? Okay, so in summary, we've had a look at discovering self-awareness, what it's all about, how it works, the habits around it, especially in the VUCA environment that we work in. We looked at 5 ways to build your self-awareness using emotional intelligence. And your job is now to go and take what you've learned or what you've validated yourself around and to go and put it into practice. You guys have been amazing. As we end off, I want you to really marinate in this. I want you to think about, and this comes from, it's unknown, by the way. Some people say it's Thatcher, some people say it's Gandhi, but like seriously, neither of it came out of anyone's mouth. So I don't know where this came from, but it's good stuff. I want you to watch your thoughts because they become your words. I want you to watch your words because they become your actions. I want you to watch your actions because they become your habits. I want you to watch your habits because they become your character. And I want you to watch your character for it becomes your destiny. Thank you so much. Okay, so as we finish off.
Okay, well, that was absolutely wonderful, Kerry. And I know that everyone that is viewing this can agree with me that there's just so many key learning outcomes that we can take back to really implement and really with our personal lives as well as our organizations. So we thank you. And I'm quite confident that everyone has left or will be leaving this webinar feeling empowered, confident, and ready to take on these learning journeys to implement them throughout the organization. So I'm going to give some time for some questions. Now, if we do not, and we aren't able to get through every question because there's so many, absolutely wonderful, I will make sure that we get back to you, and we will also be sending this through with the resources attached. So we have a few questions.
Okay, good. So Christy, the C in VUCA stands for chaotic. So we live in a chaotic world. Rachel, you've asked us to put the last slide back up, so I'm just going to go back there. Remember, you can ask Anna and the folk here at IML for a copy of these PowerPoint slides, as well as the extra bonus resources. There's some stuff in there that I didn't share as well that might also be of use to you. So be sure to go and send those through. All right, great. Catalin, I'm so glad. Thank you. Okay, great. All right, any questions? Send those through. Awesome. Absolute pleasure, Karen. Absolute pleasure.
So we have a question here from Michelle. How do you give feedback when someone is not wanting to hear the feedback?
That is such a good question. I would say to you that the way that we give and receive feedback is probably backwards. Feedback should never, ever be a monologue. It should be a dialogue. So that's the first thing. I would certainly question what kind of feedback I tend to give. If my feedback is more about how people can change, then I really would be taking a step back and asking myself, why is that? Because people are not broken. We don't need to fix them. Although I know a lot of times we think we know what could potentially be better. So perhaps it could be about stepping back and asking them what they think they're doing well and what they think they could be doing differently or working on to improve. Because let's face it, we live in a VUCA world, and what is true today is not true tomorrow. So we constantly need to be improving. By all stretch of the imagination, what I'm saying to you here is engage rather than monologue, engage in the dialogue.
Thank you. So we have another question here from Kate. How can you encourage peers, others, to pursue high levels of self-awareness, particularly when they have appeared resistant to it?
Oh my goodness, Kate. Oh, I would say that you can take a horse to water, you cannot make it drink. However, so saying, right, that's a hard truth right there. We cannot make people do things that they don't want to do. However, we can influence through our own role modeling. And I'm just thrilled. I think we've got a lot of role models out in the workplace. And I really want to release you today to give yourselves permission to be the role models that you want people to show up as, that you show up as those role models so that, they can, rub off on you in a good way. And that's the short answer. I know there's a lot more that we could say about that, but I hope that helps you, Kate.
Another question from Craig. How do you identify the tyrants of what gets in the way of your self-awareness? Are these tyrants to self-awareness your feelings?
I'm not sure I understand that, Craig. So how do you identify the tyrants of what gets in the way of your self-awareness? You know what, Craig? I think maybe the short answer to that is that's a really good question. It's a tough one, though. I would go to people that I know, like, and trust, whether it's my organization or those that I'm in a mentorship relationship with, especially from a leadership perspective. And I'd be asking them those questions. I'd be asking, though, I'd balance it. I'd ask, so what do you think my strengths are as a leader? What's one thing that you think could be getting in the way of me stepping into a higher level of self-awareness? And that's potentially the question that I'd be wanting to ask, rather than a full list of all the things that are triggering me. Okay.
So we also have Craig just responding. Are your feelings the block to self-awareness?
Very good, absolutely. And that's what I would call the inside work, right, that you've got to do. So I think, Craig, there's a lot more to what we've talked about today. And you're quite right. If you can learn to notice and name your feelings, what you'll probably find is that you'll start to, especially if you write them down, you'll start to notice that there are certain themes that come through. And the more you recognize what those themes are, the more you're able to say, but hang on, my feelings are not always necessarily a true reflection. It's just that I was triggered, because I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, I was triggered by something, or can we be triggered? So yes, I think it's important for you to get the data first so that you can then analyze it. So great question. Thank you for that. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. Awesome. I think that was everyone, hey? Yeah. So everyone's asked for the slides and the extra resources.
Absolutely.
So if you go to the resources, if you email programs@managersandleaders.com.au, hey, listen, it's there. Send it through to the guys and gals. They're waiting for your email now to get that sent through. The AN VUCA, Karen, was ambiguous because, things are not always as they seem. Okay.
Excellent. Well, As you know, we have another webinar that's coming up, and it's on the 4th of December. So we all know how wonderful this webinar is. So it's a great way to follow on from today's session. So it's around how to manage personalities in the workplace. And we will have a facilitator here with Margot Lockhart that will be facilitating it. So I highly encourage you all to register now. And again, please do make sure that you reach out and look into our programs. So our leadership programs that we're highly proud of. So our foundations program that will be commencing in February. So it's the foundations of intentional leadership. And then we have our Accelerate program that would also be available in March. So make sure you do register and reach out if you need any more information. So again, I do really appreciate everyone's time that you've given us today. You've been absolutely engaging, and it's been wonderful to see all these great questions, comments, chats, everyone getting really involved. So I do thank you again for your time. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Awesome.
Thank
We'll
you,
see you at the
Kerry.
top.